What's the keys to winning a World Cup? Three wise men. Kumar Sangakkara, tick. Eoin Morgan, definitely, tick. Why are you here, Nas? You got knocked out before the song came out.
Sorry, Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting over there asking the questions.
What's a general point in terms of building momentum and getting things right for the World Cup? Is it experience? Is it rankings? What are the things that you wanted to have in place coming into 2019?
Yeah, here I think when we first got together after the drubbing of 2015 in Australia and New Zealand, where we were completely humiliated and we looked absolutely nowhere. We had quite an aged and experienced side, but I think we were ranked number 6 or 7 in the world at the time, and we're playing a dated mantra of the game. And when you look back at the top 4 teams that qualified for the semi-finals, the average appearances throughout each and every player, I think, was between 80 and 83. So when we sat down with a blank sheet of paper, making a decision and investing in players was always a long-term view. The next thing was, right, well, what type of player do we want? What type or style of cricket do we want to play? And in 2015, average scores went up by about 30 or 40 on the previous World Cup. Conditions were good, but there was also the introduction of 2 brand new balls. So identifying what worked and what would work in the way people batted, because taking wickets was so hard to do throughout that middle phase of the game. So once we identified that, you started scribbling down names beside each role within a team, and then for the first 2 years it was about sort of trying to test our limits in being unbelievably aggressive, not necessarily setting targets, just going in with a mantra of trying to apply pressure to the opposition at every stage and every phase of the game. And that's, you hear Josh Buttler at the toss today talking about it. It still works. Regardless of the score on the scoreboard, no side in the world is good enough to let the scoreboard reflect their level of intensity. You have to be able to operate at a high intensity because you're naturally not going to perform every day, but how you earmark how you've performed can be based on intensity. So it's a thing that was talked about a lot back then, which eventuated. We looked at where we should be ranked. We thought, if you're ranked in the top 3, it normally replicates or reflects a good indication of form, role identification, and a well-rounded style of play. Yeah. So we were lucky, we were ranked number 1 in the world. We were actually ranked number 1 in the world for the first couple of years. And if you go back through history of World Cups, there's actually a really strong correlation where ODI teams are ranked and their performance in the World Cup. Because when you look at the conditions that you come up against over the years and the various styles you need to play, rankings always reflect home and away. It's just not home advantage the whole time. If we look at this graphic here, the current rankings in the world, you see England and New Zealand ranked at 4 and 5, Australia, Pakistan and India, you would argue, are the inform teams in the last 2 years. And you watch India perform in the Asia Cup at the moment against the stronger sides in Asia. It's very strong, but this is the important one. The top ranked teams in the World Cup. Last winners was us. Us obviously were ranked number 1. 2015 Australia, they went on to win. 2011 was Australia, but bear in mind that was in India, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, so conditions probably suited India a bit more. But you go 2007, 2003, Australia, correlation, really strong correlation. I'd say it's changed a little bit for this cycle of World Cups because for England, Test match cricket has been a priority. There's been a huge shift since Rob Key has come in, and I suppose since Joe Root has stepped down as captain to emphasise Test match cricket, which means Josh Buttler goes into majority of his series with not the strongest team or strongest squad that he would have available to himself.
What about key players and point of difference players being fit? I'm thinking of 2 straight off the bat, Adil Rashid and Mark Wood. We saw Jofra Archer bowl yesterday, which was encouraging, but surely he's not going to go there to start. He might go as a travelling reserve. So just those 2 players alone are going to be key, aren't they?
I mean, absolutely. The one good thing for England in the last 4 or 5 years, because of the revival in white ball cricket, they have a lot more depth to their white ball side. But in the subcontinent, on those pitches, you are going to need extra pace. Eoin has mentioned, you're going to need wicket-taking bowlers. If you're asking me who in white ball cricket are your wicket-taking bowlers, who can break a partnership when Kohli and Rohit Sharma are going, or Babar Azam and you need his wicket, you need that extra pace, or you need that mystery spin. You need someone who can spin it both ways. And that's what both Adil and Mark Wood give any side, really. And then the combination of having Stokes back, that if you get to a knockout stage in the tournament, who do you want in knockout cricket? Eoin will tell you, it's a slightly different mentality. India, for example, have struggled in knockout cricket because they almost make it a bit too much and they become a bit fearful. England under Eoin Morgan and Butler and having Stokes don't make it too fearful. They just play the same brand and style. We joke about what am I doing here. I can probably give you the expertise on how not to win a World Cup. I go back to my World Cup in '99. Nick Knight had opened for 3 or 4 years. 2 days before, Alec and Bumble knock on my door and say, will you open the batting? That is not how to win a World Cup, right? You have to have your plans in place for a long time before that. You go back to 2015, 2 months before they go, Alistair Cook is axed as captain. He's given the poison chalice going captain. They're playing an outdated brand of cricket. I think Paul Downton himself said, we were surprised how much it's gone towards 20 over cricket. That shouldn't surprise you. Nothing should surprise you. You should surprise the opposition. I go back to '96 World Cup. They turned up, Sri Lanka opened with Jayasuriya and Kaluwithrana in the power play, and everyone went, okay, what's going on here? Deepak Patel open bowling for New Zealand. You should be surprising the opposition. Your own team shouldn't be surprised.
What about in India? Because England, unlike New Zealand, travel after every game. That's another point I'll come back to you on in due course. What is the key to doing well playing in the various conditions that you find in India?
Well, number one is skill. You have to have the requisite skill in your squad who can play in any condition, who can withstand the big moments and pressure of a World Cup and the constant grind of playing, traveling, and pressure, and then making sure that you keep your players fit, because you want to have your best side and the combinations you want to play available to you at any time. And then once you have that, you understand that the big players will step up every time, or someone in that group will step up when the pressure is on. You talked about being fearful. Being fearful comes with a couple of things. One is actually playing and winning tournaments, and the more you win, and if you go into a tournament as a favorite to win, sometimes sides can become fearful. If you have nothing to lose, in terms of, I think, 87 to 2019 was a huge gap for England in terms of making a final. For us, in terms of Sri Lanka, 96 we won, 99 was a disaster, 2003 semi-finals, 7 semi-finals, 2009 finals T20, 10 semi-finals in T20, 11 finals in 50, 12 finals in T20 and 14 winners of the T20. So we understood how to play World Cups, and to us, skill was absolutely paramount, experience and X factors. Players that, as Nasser said, surprised the opposition. Mendes, Malinga, Murali, Jayasuriya, Kaluwithrana, Dilshan. We had a huge amount of players who could do that. And the real key is to be able to understand what each tournament requires in the conditions that you play, and then really commit to playing that. But nothing can be short of skill. If you don't have the requisite skill, you can have the will and the desire to win, but it doesn't come about in the manner that you do. And in 2019, England went a little bit left field. They hurried Jofra Archer into the squad, did everything they had to do to ensure that he qualified. Look for players that were different, but had the requisite skill to give you a point of advantage.
What's your advice to the captain? Come on, you've been there since they got the T-shirt, lifted the World Cup. What would you be saying to Jos Buttler?
Yeah, here I think having a level of understanding of exactly Kumar's point, what your players' strengths and weaknesses are, and reassuring them that a lot of the players in that change room have actually been around a considerable period of time for some of the biggest moments in English white ball history. You think of 2016 T20 World Cup final, the despair after Ben Stokes and Carlos Brathwaite, and every moment from then until now, winning the T20 World Cup last year in Australia and the lead in to this year's World Cup. It's going to be about sticking to what works for that changing room, that collective unit, not going insular, not trying to be somebody that, every World Cup, there's always a team that gets out of the blocks really quickly and every other team goes, we should be doing what they're doing. Do not do what they're doing. Stick to your guns, know what works, and use it to your favour.
Be some achievement if England can win in those conditions.
Yeah, and they're back-to-back winners, 50 overs, 20 overs, and also the surprise doesn't have to come from aggressive cricket. Sometimes it's learning when to sit in. Everyone was talking about 400 scores. Morgan's team just sat in at times.